So over the time, over years, okay, this relationship between carbohydrate and exercise performance became really ingrained, all right, with publication after publication, research after research, kind of showing this link. And then people started to think, okay, so the body's got a certain amount of carbohydrate, and once it's gone, that causes a problem. And all right, we can make sure that people have got as much carbohydrate as they can possibly have before they start exercise. But what about during exercise? Okay, that carbohydrate is going to be depleted over time. Okay, we're not doing anything about it. So what about if we gave them some carbohydrate during exercise? Would that help to improve their performance even more? And that's where the sort of supplementation research started to come in. And this was the start of the development of these kind of supplements. Okay? And this didn't happen until the 70s and 80s. So comparatively recently, actually. And it's important when I mention the word supplement to sort of define what I'm talking about then. Basically, carbohydrate that you get into your body in your normal diet is obviously not supplementation, that's your dietary habits. Okay? Any carbohydrate that you take in outside of your diet, so in the form of a sports drink or any other form of carbohydrate, that is a supplement. Okay, it's an addition to your diet. So sports drinks should be thought of as a supplement, not as a normal dietary habit. And we'll talk about that again in a bit of time. So essentially the 70s and 80s was when the supplementation research started. People started to think, okay, so what happens if I give someone carbohydrate during exercise? Is that going to improve their performance? And a lot of that research, what it found was that if you give someone carbohydrate during exercise, normally in the form of a drink, then yes, they do perform better. Okay, so there's a clear link again that started to be established between giving carbohydrate during exercise and improving performance. And by performance, I mean, again, helping someone to complete a given amount of exercise faster, so run a half marathon faster, for example, or being able to exercise for longer before they have to stop. Okay? So there's a huge number of studies that have shown that link, and studies have shown that link in endurance exercise, so anything lasting longer than, say, an hour and a half, okay, up to several hours. But there's also a lot of research that's shown a benefit of carbohydrate supplementation in quite short duration exercise, less than an hour and a half, okay, even up to half an hour long, so quite short duration. So due to the sheer sort of volume of research that's been done, okay, and the consistency of the results, the benefit of taking in carbohydrate during exercise has just become a given. Okay? It's not questioned anymore, or hardly questioned. It's just become a complete given because there's such a wealth of evidence behind it. All right, and again, that's what these types of supplements are based on. They're based on this research. So we've got to talk about it if we're going to understand where these drinks have come from. So that started in the 70s and 80s, it's gone all through the 80s into the 90s, and this kind of research is still being produced now. So a huge amount of research to show this link. I'll just touch on some potential reasons for why carbohydrate during exercise might benefit performance. As I've already said, we've got a limited store of carbohydrate in our body. Okay? Once it depletes, there's no doubt about it, it affects our exercise performance. Lots of suggestions as to why that might happen, but we don't need to worry about that. It definitely does affect performance. Okay? It makes it harder to carry on exercising. So one of the reasons why people have speculated that taking on carbohydrate during exercise can improve performance is that it essentially spares our internal stores of carbohydrate. Okay? Because when you take on carbohydrate during exercise, that carbohydrate enters your bloodstream as blood glucose. And what the body can do is it can take that blood glucose straight out of your blood, take it up into your muscle cells, and the muscle cells can use that glucose for energy. Okay? And if it uses that glucose from the sports drink for energy, it doesn't need to use the carbohydrate that's already present in your body, so it kind of leaves that alone. So essentially what you're doing is you're sparing your internal stores of carbohydrate. You're not having to use them as quickly because you are giving the body this external source of carbohydrate. So that's what we call muscle glycogen sparing. And it's one of the very common reasons cited for improvements in performance when you drink drinks like this. Now, as I've already mentioned, if you're taking carbohydrate during exercise, it goes into your blood, it becomes blood glucose. Okay? Now, blood glucose concentration is something that's very important, not just for exercise, but for general health. Okay? Our blood glucose levels at any given time, even right now, when you're sitting around doing very little, our blood glucose levels are regulated very tightly. They have to stay within a very narrow range. Okay? If they drop too low, we get hypoglycemic, quite a nasty condition. Okay, can lead to a lot of uncomfortable sensations. If we get too much blood glucose, we become hyperglycemic, okay? Which is equally as dangerous, if not more so, than hypoglycemia. So our blood glucose has to stay within a very narrow range. Sometimes during long duration exercise, our blood glucose levels can start to drop off, and we can actually become hypoglycemic during exercise. That brings its own problems. What it also means is that your blood or your muscles can't take as much glucose out of your blood and move them into your muscle cells for energy. So you start to struggle, if you like, to get enough carbohydrate into your muscles and continue your muscles working at the intensity they need to work at. All right? And in that case, you have to start slowing down and you have to start working at a lower intensity if you want to carry on. It also affects your brain. Okay? It starts to give you feelings of confusion, you can't make decisions properly, you can't really think about what you're doing very well, so it's not a good situation to be in. So taking in carbohydrate during exercise has been thought to keep your blood glucose levels higher, okay, keep them more in a normal range. And by doing that, your muscles can continue to take that glucose out of the blood and use it for a fuel. All right, and it maintains your use of carbohydrate where you need it to be. So that's one of the other main reasons why people think that taking in carbohydrate during exercise can benefit performance. That's two of the main reasons. There are quite a number of others as well, but it gets quite complicated in its own right talking about that, because there's still a lot of debate about how and why carbohydrate can actually improve performance. So I'm just going to touch on some of the key ones.